Hello and welcome to The Dive presented by Honda. Season 4, episode 26 has come upon you. Just a couple of updates before we begin. I'm going on vacation this week, or what will be next week since we're recording right now on Sunday. And Azale is going on vacation afterwards. We're going to fill in for each other, pull out the extra work for the LCS weekend to allow each other to go on vacation.
When's Mark going on vacation?
Mark's never going on vacation. We just have him chained to the desk. That's why you saw him lean back there. He actually has to sleep in his chair now. We don't allow him to leave.
I got some strong ankle weights on me.
Are you going anywhere, Kobe? Or are you just like staycation?
I mean, where can I go?
That's what I was thinking.
We're flooded by Corona. Not only is the U.S. the worst country at dealing with it, but we're in California that has most, in L.A. in California, which has most of the California cases. It's actually
you can go camping.
Yeah, I'm going to try and go hiking. I'm going to disconnect from all social media. So
that's good.
I'm hoping I can get, some stress relief that way. But enough about vacations because we just came off of one of the most exciting weeks of LCS that we have had in a long time. Boo, boo, boo. It's upset weekend. You thought it was rivalry weekend. Just kidding. That was a bait the entire time. And as of now, after this week, literally every single team in the LCS could qualify as our number 2 team. Even Immortals and Dignitas could technically win out
if you
and
draw
get
the
that
circle,
second place spot. So you go.
The circle of teams who won this week, you like beat someone or something. Yeah, you could do that. I mean, it was 7 out of 10 games were upsets, maybe
something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, 1 C9 game and 2 Team Liquid games were the only things that went according to plan, basically.
Yeah, based on just like the record, right? If you're always betting on the team that has more wins, then almost nothing went according to plan. As you said this week, it was pretty crazy. I mean, one of the things that surprised me the most about the weekend was not just some of the upsets, but also like how dominant some of the upset games were. It wasn't just like this one freak occurrence and the game is like thrown or whatever. I mean, Cloud9 kind of got slammed by 100 Thieves, to be honest. The Immortals win over TSM didn't feel close at all to me, right? Like the Dignitas win over Immortals wasn't close either. There's all these games where it was like, this team has not been good for a long time. It was definitely not expected to win. And then they came out and actually played really good games, which does make it more exciting. Because for me, it felt like for a lot of the split, it's been like, okay, Cloud9 up here. And then we got this group of like second place contendees and then a bunch of stinkers down in the basement, right? And it feels like it's the rise of the stinkers now. These teams are coming up. They're coming out of the sludge, they're like coming out of the basement and they're pulling people down with them.
Exactly. I feel like that's a key point because it feels like they're getting the stink on everybody else.
They're like zombies. It's like a zombie. It bites you and then you turn to a zombie slowly.
Because go ahead, Mark.
Nope.
you
smooth, guys. Smooth.
It does feel like there's 2 parts of it. Wow, I am excited to see that the teams at the bottom of the standings that we were highlighting. And when I was like, everybody 7th and below are done with losing, they're making all these roster changes, they're throwing stuff out the window because they're just getting dumped on being at the bottom of the standings. I'm excited to see those teams rewarded for a lot of these changes that they've made. Immortals looks way better with all their roster swaps. Dignitas got a 2-0 weekend after not taking any games in summer, and 100 Thieves then take down the number 1 team. It's actually just crazy how much success all these stinkers had with their roster swaps. On the flip side, though, a lot of our better teams making a lot of mistakes in these games.
Yeah, we had a segment plan where it was going to be like everyone like make your version of a tier list of the LCS. And so, spoilers, I was doing like processing power. And I was like, these guys are abacuses. These are like, these are graphing calculators. Here's a regular like Alienware computer. And then here's like a quantum computer. I'm glad we didn't reveal those because my tier list would be very wrong. We killed that segment for this reason. It's just like nothing's right anymore. So we'll save it for a rainy day.
It's pretty insane how quickly, a lot of opinions have changed. I feel like a couple weeks ago, people were looking at EG. Almost everyone was agreeing as like second best team, maybe.
I didn't
completely fall off. No, a couple weeks ago you did. Last week, I had them as the worst of the second for second.
Oh,
I was off the train last week, but like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I'm talking about, like say week 2, people were like, EG's looking really good. That was like when they only had their one cast and lost and their 3 wins were dominant. Then I think a lot of people were kind of all aboard the FlyQuest hype train. They were looking pretty good. They have fallen off hard. And then people are like, no. TSM for real, though. Even Cloud9 is telling us TSM is number 2. And
we can't
now
even trust Cloud9 to power rank. They're at the top. They're supposed to
they
know.
lost.
It's
they don't
like,
know what they're doing.
Like who is good? I mean, I guess it's TL is clear number 2 now. Like even just based off of record, they still have had shaky games, but they're 8-2, right? Like they're actually only 1 game back of Cloud9, and the fact that they are 8-2 is actually a really impressive record. I was talking to Jat a little bit yesterday, and it's like at the end of the day, getting top 2 is such a big deal for the playoff format because you get that bye, right? And that is going to be a pretty big advantage. So I do think that it's like whether or not your wins were shaky or not, picking up these wins and staying ahead in the standings is incredibly important. As long as you are good come playoff time, it doesn't matter how you got those wins if you finish top 2.
That's why on last week's episode, I said I had it by the standings with TL, and admittedly, I had TSM in there as well, right there with
in
TL
terms of the tier
in second
list
place. But I also invested all my stocks into Team Liquid.
I invested in Immortals. Let's go.
Me too, but I don't feel great. Like in terms of tier list of being wrong from last week, it's definitely Azale was most right, then Kobe, then like me way down here. I was like, yeah, EG, FlyQuest, they're still the best. And I was like, both eat bagels. Everyone's eating bagels.
What does that mean? What is this?
A zero, a goose egg.
Oh.
Honestly, I love bagels. What are you trying to say, Mark?
Yeah.
These teams they don't have a W. They're going zeros.
Eating
Zero
bagels
wins.
is definitely a W, though. Like bagels are delicious. So I'm not really
maybe
with you on
Azale, it's
metaphor.
like a dry, stale bagel. No
I feel
cream
like
cheese, no nothing.
Still, I mean, it's that's not the bagel's fault. That's like the person who put
user
the toppings
error
on. Yeah, it's user error. You can't judge it based off that. I feel like Mark's just trying to lead us away from the soup. So he's trying to just inject bagels into the conversation. I'm not having it. Bagels are great.
Thing. It's a thing. You got to eat a bagel
No,
in the game.
I understand what you're saying. We're just trying to roast you. Zeros look like bagels. Bagels look like zeros. Woo. But honestly, we need to dive into these teams because this is the biggest story. This is what led to all of the upset week. FlyQuest, TSM, EG, they all went 0-2 this week.
Pick your poison. What were you most excited to talk about of the upsets?
I mean,
honestly. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm most excited about it from like the lower teams perspective, right? Because I'm actually really happy that we did see some good games turned in by those teams. Like I'm actually really excited to go into next week and see how Immortals does and see how Dignitas does. And I can't say I was excited about those teams at all coming into this week. Not nearly as much. I want to see can these teams continue. 100 Thieves has won 3 straight. They just beat Cloud9. They look great. Can they continue this type of trajectory? That is my biggest takeaway. As far as the glass being half full, because I want to have a league where it's exciting. I want to have a league where there's not these clear lines where it's like you're below this line, you have no chance to win. Well, then I don't really care about your game as much.
All right, let's start at the bottom up then. 100 Thieves. They take down Cloud9. They should be the ones that you have the most excitement about. And my personal, biggest surprise with it is that it actually came together so quickly. When they first announced the roster changes, and after the first game, I reached out to all the coaching staff and Papa Smithy, and I'm talking about them. Get some background on Poom. Yeah, he hasn't played the game for that long. Super exciting rookie, bringing up NA talent. Contracts, I obviously already know extremely well. But they highlighted specifically Contract's leadership abilities, his communication with the team. Obviously, his aggressive play style still holds true from his kind of debut on Cloud9 and going to Worlds and playing that way. For us to see this quickly after only a couple of games with that roster on stage, and they said only a week or two of practice with those players, that is incredibly impressive to me because this is a hard style to pull off when you're trying to play aggressively. You constantly have to reprove yourself in these decisions and in these skirmishes. And it came together so quickly versus the most difficult opponent in Cloud9. Loved the draft. We've been asking for carries for someday. They get him a Camille Galio combination, putting
A Jace
Ryoma
game.
on this, Galio to back up the other two players. Contracts is just popping off. It all went according to plan, and it was a very good plan that they had laid out.
It definitely felt a little bit like finally, like I was been saying for a while, like what about Ryoma on like Jace, or excuse me, Karma and Galio and some of the more supportive things. I definitely don't think it would have worked as well with Meteos or even Stunt. But their draft today was incredible in terms of like the Ashe for the engage, Karma to like help win lane with Ashe, but then also the combo with the Olaf. Like it was such a well-crafted team comp, and I'm happy to see them finally going more towards a specific style. Before, when it was just kind of like, all right, someday and Meteos are playing the meta picks, and then here's Azir for Ryoma. Like I'm excited to see them branching out a little bit more and actually playing to their player strength, because Contracts, when he played Graves and Ezreal jungle, he was, a bit of a resource hog, but he used them well at Worlds, and that's when he looks so good. And I think they should keep playing to him as more of a power farmer / aggro jungler.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of this really aggressive jungle top duo, right? It's something that I think we have seen success with in the past. I do think that it's very well proven, by the people that they beat, really, that your mid laner doesn't have to be as high resources and focus on farm all the time. Obviously, it's good to be diverse and be able to play those picks too. But I think it was nice to see, and for me, someday turned in one of the strongest weekends of any player of the year. I thought he absolutely crushed. I was actually really sad that he didn't get player of the week.
Yeah,
I think he got robbed.
Kobe, what'd you vote?
I still voted for Contracts.
Yeah,
and I think Azale was underselling his Nidalee game. I saw some of your
his Nidalee game was okay. His Nidalee game.
You were saying he was just farming versus the Olaf. He ganked all the lanes.
Yeah,
I agree. It was either Contracts or Someday.
Yeah.
Someday. And I tweeted after the first game as well on Jace, like he absolutely 1v9 that game.
That game was just insane. He was literally like, I felt like that's why I felt like he deserved it, just because I thought he put together two incredible games. And the Jace game in particular, there was that one fight by the mid lane tier 2 where he just runs in like 1v4 and kills Mash by himself. And that's just like, yeah, I'm just going to win the game here. And then the final fight where he just 1v2 kills Power of Evil, flashing over his shockwave by himself. I'm like, this bad man, let's go.
He was for sure hulking out there, and he absolutely just won them the game.
Contracts had a great week too.
It wasn't 1v4. Poom also had a flank at the same time. So people are like, oh my, because they're focused on the camera on Sunday. Yeah, and Poom ults the other carry away. So it was really intelligent for Someday to recognize that as Jace, you can engage. And that's such a rare thing to see. Melee form Jace going in, 1v4. But since he has a confidence in Poom, who's another one of the players, we can just glow about all of the 100 Thieves players right now. He took away the other carry and dunked him into the rest of the team. And
Nidalee, to throw Contracts out a little bit, like he was actually contributing in team
fights. Was there too.
Hey, I'm not even kidding. I know.
He healed the Jason, gave him a tax.
No, I swear to God, watch Contracts in the team fights.
I know.
He's actually doing something.
He played well. He played well.
Yeah. I'm just saying that, like, compared to the Nidalees that we have seen in the LCS, who go from like kind of get a lead early, he did get the double kill early on and influence the lanes and go top and stuff like that as well. Yeah, he died once, but that was actually his only death. And like sometimes it was solo jumping on him. He'd 1v1 solo off on the side of the fight and then like get out alive, and he baited a lot of skill shots. So like it was a full team effort to win that one. And then obviously in the second game versus C9, it was kind of like the prop up comp for him, where they have the Galio Karma as well as even the Camille. It's like even the Camille was absolutely popping off. Like and I do think Licorice, and this is something we talked about a while ago, where it's like when we're talking about sometimes, who gets player of the week and, these different things, it's like there are mistakes sometimes that Cloud9 players make that get glossed over because their team is so good that they can recover from it as a team. And then that person is obviously not just going to continually make mistakes because everyone on their team is so freaking good. And this is one of those games where it was like,
that kind of happened a bit, but they couldn't fully recover from it. Licorice actually misplayed the lane pretty badly. When he was level 2, walking into range of the Camille who's level 3, getting his flash. Actually, I believe his flash was forced there. I don't know if I can recall specifically, but the lane got frozen on him off of it. It was like this really bad situation. And then we saw multiple roams up, from Niski, from Blabber, trying to put him ahead. But, at the same time, Blabber was like, in a bush waiting, try to gank, no, it doesn't happen, then wraps around. He's not power farming during that time. He's falling more behind individually. There's another time where, Niski's running straight from base to top lane while the tank Jarvan is farming his mid lane for him, and things like this that were really given up to try to paper over some of the mistakes that Licorice did make, because you have to have this Jace able to play aggressive. Like, if you fall behind against Camille Galio, you're just going to get slammed, not only in the 1v1, but you're going to get potentially 2v1. So Cloud9 was putting a ton of resources into trying to make this happen, and it really didn't. And there were some pretty big mistakes there, I think, from Licorice. So, he did get a solo kill. He did get back into the game. But my point is just that it cost Cloud9 a lot. And this is one of the first teams that I think continuously responded appropriately to their aggression. When they try to attack bot, there's people there. When they try to attack mid, there's people there. There's people roaming and annoying Niski, like interrupting his recall multiple times in a row, first the jungler, then the support. There's all these little things, and they just checked all the boxes. And that's what was so impressive about it to me, because we've seen, that mistake happen from Licorice, or that mistake happen from Blabber or whoever. Cloud9 papers it over, but they don't get punished elsewhere for it. And this is the first time it felt like they really were losing things everywhere when they were trying to overcommit to one side.
It's the main reason I'm highlighting the communication that they talked about with putting in Contracts and Poom. There's a reason 100 Thieves put them in together, because they're the two loudest people from 100 Thieves Academy, the two main shot callers, and they kind of balance each other. And Contracts having the confidence to play against any opponent. This guy is just, if there's anything about him, he's full of confidence. And he had this really good interview with Travis where he talks about not underestimating any opponents, being one of the problems when he first went down to Academy, and just not taking it seriously, thinking he was too good for it. And then going from that to playing against Cloud9 and having the confidence on stage to play against a team like this and continually force these issues. That's the thing. A lot of other teams would make some skirmish victory or call Cloud9 on one mistake. And like you're talking about, then they would let Cloud9, make the next move or recuperate from that. But 100 Thieves just rapid fire. Someday pushes up a lane. He goes for the invade. He's in the jungle now. He's deep warding. He's ulting people with Camille. Boom, Galio ultimate is down on top of it. They just kept firing. And I thought that made the game really fun to watch as well. So I'm happy both from a standpoint of, all right, cool, Cloud9, they finally got their hand caught. They finally got called on some of the issues, and we have another team that's trying to play this fast-paced style and go for these plays, and is going to make more of the games exciting.
The other thing I'll throw in just on the C9 side is that they were experimenting a little bit. This was the first time that Olaf was given over to them, and they didn't take it in their 1-2 position, and instead they took Jarvan and
I think it was Wukong Senna were their early picks on, right? First round.
I think.
And I can't remember if that was this time. In one of their games, I think they did draft it 1-2. I want to say.
Either way,
J4 I think was 3. Because I remember talking about how this was a triple flex when they drafted the Wukongs. That would mean that Jarvan wasn't picked yet.
Yeah, the triple flex game was the game versus TSM. This one they had the J4 picked.
First, really?
Yeah, that was the game where they had the Orange set and Wukong that they could triple flex. Anyways, the point I was going to say is that the Jarvan is just not super strong right now, and it felt like sometimes people tunnel on like, this is a counter because I ult J4 or I ult Olaf and he can't run through my wall. But Olafs take flash now. They don't take ghosts anymore. It's a bad matchup. You heard Contracts even talking about in his post-game interview that he felt like he got a free matchup in the jungle because you can just crap on the J4 1v1 and stuff. And the J4 needs to affect the lanes early to like get that done. And I definitely felt like there were the draft wasn't necessarily terrible from C9, but they were trying some different things. And I definitely think putting Blabber on J4 just feels bad when he's shown how good he can be on some of the other picks that have a little bit more individual agency.
So I did just double check. It was Wukong Senna first 2 picks. So they did leave that flex open, but I read this as they were going for like hardcore dive, because when they picked it, the third pick was Ash, so like that was already locked in. So 100 Thieves first three was Karma, Olaf, Ash, and then the third pick for Cloud9 was J4. So I read this as like you're just trying to hard dive the Ash and trying to slam it, and I actually thought that they were going to go for Galio. Potentially, they would have been very AD heavy, but I think 100 Thieves just responded really well to a lot of the stuff that they were doing, right? Like they had this really strong winning lane. They take away, I think, a lot of the things that were actually combo really well with the J4. So maybe Cloud9 like didn't necessarily anticipate a lot of that, because like Ori got banned away, which would have comboed really well with the J4, with the J4 and the Wukong. Galio got taken away. They picked away that. So I feel like 100 Thieves really responded well.
All right, on to Dignitas then. I thought this was going to be the biggest brain, most exciting upset of Dig going 2-0.
How wrong you
winless
are.
team before the whole 100 Thieves Cloud9 game happened, and that ended up kind of trumping it. So I'm glad we went on that first. But get back to Dignitas, because everyone was memeing on them for putting in Mark's old Team Liquid crew, basically. the Lorlo, Dardoch, Phoenix trio came in, and the TF game from Phoenix right out of the gate was a big miss with a lot of the plays. But then, boom, back-to-back games, he gets Azir, smashes.
Back to 2016.
Exactly. His Azir was so good, especially in the second game, dealing with FlyQuest, who was one of the top rated teams, one of the second place teams.
I think probably Dardoch was the most impressive of the players for me, if I had to give one. The Ignite Graves game, we haven't seen it in the LCS, though. I think it might have been played somewhere else.
Everyone plays it in solo queue nowadays.
Yeah. But has it been played competitively anywhere? I thought somewhere played it, but I could be wrong.
I could
Probably
check Graves.
come out.
Whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
Either way, it was cool to see him bust it out, and it is something that you have to step up and dominate on, and he actually did that and kind of took over the game, which was super impressive. And then his Lee Sin game was pretty good as well, though. That FlyQuest game, a lot of people stepped up. Johnson, Afro, even Lorlo was playing well, and Phoenix. So they look really cohesive if they can keep playing at that level. I thought they didn't really make any mistakes. I think FlyQuest played terribly this weekend, but that's another topic, because I didn't really see, like, Phoenix had a bad warding play level 1 to die to, or level 2 to die to Cassin instead of trying to level up and like finish pushing the wave, hit 3 for your shift, and then you don't die there. But like that didn't slow them down at all.
Yeah, I mean the Ignite Graves one was super impressive to me as an individual performance, but it was also harder for me to like measure how much I cared, because I felt like Immortals played so bad that game. Like they were abysmal. They didn't do anything the whole game. So it kind of felt like he was just playing in a bot game and just running around and doing whatever he wanted. Like, to their credit, I think that they crafted a really smart plan. I think it was a really good fit for the Phase Rush Ignite Graves. I think that, drafting that alongside, these 3 pushing lanes that they essentially had crafted, they had the Azir shoving in. I want to say they had Ashe or something in the bot lane shoving in really hard, maybe with Karma. I can't remember exactly what the draft was. But, they played it out so well. So, like, they were fairly faultless in their games. I really agree with that, which I think is very impressive, because yes, their opponents didn't necessarily play that well, but it's like you can't blame them for that. You know what I mean? And it's really encouraging when Dardoch and Phoenix are doing well, and when Lorlo's doing well, because pretty much everyone agrees that Johnson and Afro have been stand-ups for the team, right? Like these guys have actually been playing, I think, pretty damn solid. Afro in particular feels like he's having a resurgence in his career. It feels like he had been on a bit of a downward trend. I've been really impressed with how he has been playing, even in all their losses, which I think it's actually so hard to stand out as a support when your team is losing, because oftentimes if you're not checking, if you're not warding at the exact right times when you're behind, you just die for vision, you die for the engage, you die to save your carry who's in the wrong spot. And you can start like stacking up those L's pretty quick and looking really, really boosted when you are on a team that is 0-8 and you're the support player. So I felt like it was really impressive that it felt like he was towing the line between being aggressive and not just running it when his team is always losing.
Graves, for the record, in all across the world is only up to 3.8% games with Ignite, so it's still really low. But yeah, I see it a bunch in high yellow solo queue. People are a lot of different mobility junglers. People are are trying to take Ignite.
Nimbus
for
OP. Now
the
you have
extra-
2 short summoners.
Yeah, the extra bullying. Nimbus Cluck is insane. For in multiple cases, junglers as well as summoners, spellbook mid laners, but still back on Dig. Do you project it to keep going? Because for 100 Thieves, I think with their accolades, it looks like a really steep slope that they're on. With Poom and Contracts, I think both great additions. And Dignitas did get some very big wins for themselves. And I always like to see the last place teams and winless teams get some morale and start to turn their rally caps on and stuff. But for Immortals and Dig, I don't feel like it's going to be as steep of a climb as I necessarily see as possible for 400 Thieves.
That's what I was going to ask. Is someone want to take the happy end before I go negative?
And are they even in the same bucket? Because I don't think anyone is saying that, Immortals, everything's fixed. You just got shit on by the worst team in the league, right? Like, you got absolutely clowned on by a 0-8 team. I don't think it's like, all right, yes, straight to the top. Let's go. Team Liquid, next stop.
Yeah. But better than before, right?
Better than before. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with both of them. I don't think that it's going to be this like meteoric rise to the top. But I do think, when you look at all the Immortals games as a whole, you count they have 2 wins, 3 losses, I want to say now with this new roster. 2 of the losses were actually very close against those top teams. I do think that matters. They had 1 real stinker game against Dignitas, but Dignitas is playing better. Overall, they're probably a middle of the pack team. And I think that's a big improvement, right? I think that they could compete up around, like 4, 5, 6 style of area. Depends, if they can continue making improvements and how they're gelling going forward as a team, because there are some guys who are like on the precipice of being really good. I mean, even today, it did feel like they almost threw their game a couple of times, to be fair, against TSM. Like Insanity, I said it in the cast, but his quirky packages were just giving me flashbacks to like him, Azir trying to go in an Azir shuffle and throwing the game, him missing the shockwave and throwing the game, like going for these aggressive plays that are too aggressive. Like the reward is not there for the risk. But he has been playing really well overall. And it's like, there's a lot of potential there. And if he can kind of curb some of those rough edges, then hey, maybe they can climb even higher.
I think for both Immortals and Dig, I think they'll have better back 9 than front 9. But I don't know how meteoric of a rise for Dig. The negative, I thought they played really well this weekend, but the negative spin to put on it was there were glaring problems in Immortals and FlyQuest games. Ignar probably played the worst game I've seen, one of the worst games I've seen him play in North America. And then they got pretty good drafts for them, like Thresh or Afro got Thresh in that game. Azir for Phoenix twice over the TF ban. Like even Phoenix was memeing it a little bit on Twitter. It was pretty funny. I thought they had some pretty good drafts, and I think maybe it's people not respecting them or what, I don't know. I think they're clearly better than they were with the old lineup, and I think they will have a better second half of the split. But I'm not quite ready to go. Like, I think they can make playoffs, but playoffs is top 8 now, and we had a segment which was, can they win a playoff series? And I was like, I don't know. It's a big ask.
I think it's so fun because in a vacuum, in isolation, we're like, oh, this team is better at the bottom of standings. This team is better. This team is better. Who's taking the spot? If you're like, all right, well, they're probably a 4-5-6 team. Oh, this one's now also a middle of the pack team.
Yeah, someone's got to be 10.
Like the middle of the pack is getting pretty full here.
And that's why it's hard to say, right? But I just think that there's a lot of teams that can be competitive, and it's going to depend on week to week. Like they've at least shown me enough that I'm not just writing them off in a lot of the games. But I mean, it's incredibly hard to power rank the league because a lot of our teams have had some really good games now and some really, really bad games, right? So I think consistency is the problem more than the peak level of play. I think that's what most of these teams are struggling with. I do think Team Liquid can be, outside that box a little bit. They're not always like aggressive, and sometimes they fall behind a lot, but they aren't usually making like huge mistakes. But for most of the other teams, besides Cloud9, it does feel like they can go from having this incredible game to just absolutely, throwing leads and making really thoughtless errors and stuff. Like TSM's game today was just terrible. Like they were like Broken Blade a couple times. It felt like he was like almost absolutely trolling. Like the Rift Herald fight where Doublelift is bot lane. He doesn't even have his ultimate and he just ease in 1v4. Like what is ever going to happen that's positive in that situation? And then goes from that to like getting picked off, and he should have died mid lane, but Bjergsen, barely got in range to ult him. There was like, then their bot lane pushing with everyone missing on the team, and they die for free. Like there was so many just like, your mind is not in the game. There were so many moments like that for me.
Yeah, and even later on into the game, there are so many moments where Broken Blade as Wukong tries to charge in, and he like maybe gets a 1% ult on Xmithy, and Xmithy just turns around and kills him as Graves. And he's just like, you're messing with the wrong champion here. And just chases him right back down, and you're like, what the heck am I watching? Yeah, what just went on here? The only thing I have confidence still in TSM is Bjergsen.
Yeah.
Bjergsen still had. Go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say, even I had some pretty disappointing things. Like when Broken Blade baited the Ash arrow that hit his clone, Bjergsen just like hauls ass to that side as if he actually got baited, that was the real Broken Blade, and it leaves him horribly mispositioned at the jungle at the Drake. And I was like, what is he? Did he just get baited by his own teammate?
I think he was just trying to get over, because like my understanding of that whole comp is that it's literally you're supposed to drop bombs on the Wukong's head, speed him up, and he's supposed to ult in 1,000 miles an hour with the Zillion bomb going off. And they never once pulled off that combo. So that's my guess, is that he's like, all right, sweet, the Ash arrow's down, we'll disengage on this side, and I'll get over there and I'll speed him up and we'll pincer him. It'll be great. But yeah, I mean that dragon fight was terrible. They like had 3 people kind of fighting on one side, Broken Blade in mid lane, Bjergsen off in the jungle. It's like.
And not to just shift from one side of the map to the other, I think Doublelift and Biofrost have made a lot of map awareness mistakes. So I was guessing the CLG game, and Wiggly clears a ward. He sweeps it in the CLG jungle, leading over to bottom side, and immediately just runs bottom after clearing the ward. When you sweep a ward, you auto attack it. That gives vision to the enemy team. Doublelift and Bio still push up. Boom, they get ganked. They lose so much bottom lane control. Then it happens really big this time around. There are multiple times where the entire rest of the team reset, and then him and Bio are pushing up on the bottom side, and they get ganked. And it was similar to some of the Broken Blade moves where you're like, wait, what's going on? When it really just came down to some map awareness moves and not tracking enemy gank presence.
Yeah,
I mean, even laning, like Doublelift lost both sums because he just walked up too far, and Hakuho hit him with a hook in lane, and that was one of the problems that led to that bot play, was they had no sums after that. Like it was just one of those games where it felt like they got themselves super hyped for C9 in like trap game, but like it's Immortals, you don't think they're that good, you're hyped for C9. And then you just go out there and you lay an egg because you have no energy and no one's talking. And like, I don't know what it is, but I don't think that's TSM's level. So I'm not too worried about it. It does feel like one of those games where your coach rips you apart after because of effort level. And like you guys said, like just paying attention to the map and communicating.
Then that kind of reminds me also of the game where Doublelift doesn't cleanse the binding, and they're kind of all memeing on it afterwards. Like, ha ha ha, brain was off there. I didn't cleanse. But you have those racking up, those kind of types of moments start racking up. It's that's going to lead to a drop in the standings.
Yep, it definitely is. I guess maybe the last one that I want to touch on something. We had talked about Cloud9, but I was curious to kind of get your guys' take on the Senna Wukong stuff. Like, do you think that they were just trying to threaten that, trying to get another quick game under their belt, maybe underestimating 100 Thieves? Because when I saw that first game, I cast that game against TSM, and I was like, oh, well, now you have to watch out for the Wukong and pick ban. And then I think it was Sven got interviewed, and he literally said that. He's like, yeah, now everyone has to watch out because it's flexed 3 ways, right? And everyone has got to give us more respect in pick ban. And then they picked it again the next day, and I was like, did they think it was the best pick here, or was it just like getting another W under your belt with the Wukong Senna bot lane so that people have to ban it, or so that you can actually start flexing it around more and messing with teams? I wasn't sure that I was like fully convinced with it. It is like a strong skirmish comp, but it also feels like it takes away a lot of their late game insurance, because that's often how Sven acts. these topside 3 are just going insane and running around and fighting everyone and killing everyone. And kind of in the back lane, there's this marksman who's just shooting minions, that he's getting real strong, and like he's your insurance. And that you don't really have that necessarily with a lot of the compositions. If you're trying to still be aggressive in mid lane and top lane, and you're having Wukong in the bot lane.
I think they kind of disrespected the 100 Thieves bottom lane ability to punish it. And 100 Thieves are like, okay, well, we're going to pick hard poke bottom lane and just rain down damage on you, try and deny CS early. And I think they did that effectively with the topside game plan going so well and drawing all the focus. It also let Cody Sun and Poom kind of dish this out and put it more behind than Cloud9's probably used to. So it's a bit of them having so much success all the time and not running into those types of roadblocks and not running into these types of answers from their opponents, I think.
I probably look more at the top side for the bigger problem in today's draft. Like Cassio, J4, Jace, your Jace is dying to the Camille, falling behind, and like it's kind of scrappy and they're able to fight back. But if Camille's getting gold and accelerating her point to her items, it just speeds up how quickly she'll be able to murk the Jace over and over. Blabber got absolutely run over this game, and like I'm fine with playing weak side Senna, Wukong, if your top side's closer to what you're usually doing. But they also experimented with their top side being a more standard front to back team fight with a little bit of like poke in the top lane, which is supposed to be your pressure valve in the early game, but then your top lane loses.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the part of the game plan that went really wrong for me.
Were you guys really surprised that neither Cassio nor Jace took phase rush? Because I really was, that they went double conqueror. When you're going against Olaf, it feels like phase rush is so valuable against both Olaf and Trundle to actually kite it out. Yes, there is more like consistent damage with Conqueror, but I was expecting phase rush on both, and I got phase rush on neither.
For me, at least I wasn't expecting it on the Jason to Camille matchup, because I was like, okay, that Camille is either going to stun you from out of range of you proccing phase rush or Hextech ults you. So you're not going to be able to run out of the Hextech ultimatum. So for that one, I was like, all right, he's got the Conqueror, so he knows he has to stand and fight if you get the victim of the Hextech ultimatum. I always really like it on Cassiopeia. I actually have never played a Cassiopeia game where I haven't had phase rush.
I know.
But, to be fair, I haven't played that many.
I like Conqueror against tanks, but there wasn't really a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say against tanks. You're into Galio. Cassio has always been one of the better picks into Galio for the most part, just in terms of laning. And maybe Niski was thinking with the Conqueror, he can actually really, really bully out the Galio a little bit more. So it could be one of those things where both are just kind of tunneled on their lane matchups a little and not really thinking about, this helps me against the Olaf and stuff.
It's just interesting because I feel like the Galio, that was more true when Galio built tank. Right now, Galio just goes AP and doesn't interact. He just kills the wave with Proto Belt and Q and his passive. It's like, feels like a different style matchup.
I'm just assuming because it's the same. It's people have picked Cassio into Galio forever now.
Yeah, it's a good matchup.
Yeah.
All right. What about EG then? Because you wrapped us right back around to Cloud9 real quick, but we didn't really get into this one where EG, their execution of the split push this time around, even, which is the trophy for EG, the main associated
call it execution
strategy.
They're bumbling.
They got picked off so many times, and then there were just so many situations where I turned to Freak, or I turned to the monitor that has Freak on him. I was like, Freak, how many times are we gonna have a solo laner running through the base by themselves?
It was terrible. That was actually terrible. They were so far ahead early. They literally won all 3 lanes and just managed to look like they had no idea what was going on. I do think that yes, they got Kumo ahead. That was cool with the Riven and everything. Watching Viper teamfight on Riven versus watching Kumo teamfight on Riven was 2 very different experiences.
The solo queue Riven on their team, solo queue Riven on your team.
There was like, so I'd have to watch it back to remember it exactly, but there was this fight by Baron that I remembered very clearly, where he's running, he's running towards the other team essentially. He pops his ult or whatever. He does the first 2 Qs, and then I'm like, oh, okay, he's gonna Q3 flash into a stun. He's gonna do the full Riven combo essentially and try to one-shot these people. Instead, he like does his 3rd Q and then flashes and then like stuns and starts like autoing because he doesn't have Qs up and stuff. And I was just like, what am I watching here? Like, this just looks like you're not comfortable with the champion. And Riven is incredibly punishing if you are not really, really clean with the combos, right? Like, it is those high moments for which people play Riven, where you actually have the flash. And when you have flash on that champion, it's a completely different beast in team fight because you can get on top of people. And with a lead, you can legit 100-0 someone in the combo. And he just never seemed to be able to pull that off properly. So, I was pretty disappointed on the execution of the individual champion. I was really disappointed that Jizuke and him were just like running it down side lanes. It didn't even feel like they were pushing at the same time. So one side would get collapsed on. They're getting nothing on the other side. This guy's just running through the base. We saw like 10 times where someone's running through the base dying. And I'm like, surely they're getting something elsewhere. No, they're not. The other team's like, they're farming wolves or something.
Okay, a couple of the times they did. I would say it was really fun to cast that. And a couple of times they did like get the tower on the other side. But there are definitely some ones where they did not have the other pressure points in place when they go for that play.
Or even like back off correctly. Like just they would like go into the base every single time and like die inside the base. And it's sad too, because it was one of those games where like I also was disappointed in CLG. Their early game plan with what Wiggly's like decision to go like sit and bot jungle one, because it's basically a map split that they were opting into Israel Braum, that your Volibear is just sitting there. It's pre-6 for Callisto Morgana, so you don't really have any dive threat. Your Volibear is not 6 to turn the turret off. In the meantime, they're camping the hell out of Deus. Like, he just got crapped on in the early game. Not saying he played well individually, but he got no help. There was 2 separate situations where they split the map effectively with their junglers, and it's like Riven into GP versus Callisto Morgana into Braum Ezreal. Like, I wonder which one's going to survive that map split a little bit better. And no surprise, they fall massively behind the game off this.
Yeah. I mean, they did nothing bot side. Like, they didn't even win. They barely even ahead in the 2v2, if I'm recalling correctly. They were like a couple CS up or something. So it's like, not only did they not, dive nonstop on the bot side or like zone them out, they like weren't even really ahead. But I mean, that is something that I do think is like fairly par for the course for CLG. I do think that they're the worst laning bot lane in the league, and statistically, I think that has been like pretty well supported. Looking at it now, MASH is actually behind, but does have less games than 6A. But 6A's average at 15 is negative 7.5, and I think it was actually worse maybe coming into this. Like, so they went even, but it's like you counterpicked, you have a range support. You were playing strong side and you went even. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure they were pushing the waves in, and Ezreal Braum super hard to dive. So they didn't get the CS discrepancy from like trying to zone them off minions or from actually pushing it, building up the wave and then going for the dive. I think like those are the 2 ways to do it. I definitely did want to congratulate the draft on the other side for picking, knowing the weak side for EG. I was like, oh my God, this is so smart. You pick your red side counter pick, Riven for top side, knowing you're going to have your jungler camping up there. And then you have Braum Ezreal, super defensive weak side, which is, pretty hard to get, anything done on and get a dive off. So I also think that was pretty good on their part. But yeah, that was another super.
It was a way to cap the weekend.
It was a banger. #LiveEvil.
Yeah, CLG did. They were a lot more aggressive towards the later stages when actually fighting over those objectives, though, after the previous game this weekend, where Team Liquid, merely by having Shen and holding Impact Stand United, got so many of them kind of for free. So that was definitely good to see later into the game when they started taking those and were able to eventually win with them.
Yep. Overall, I think CLG can be happy that they picked up the win. I do think that they were kind of underdogs coming into it. They were behind early, so that's part of it is good.
I would say them and Golden Guardians were the 2 that probably had the least movement in people's opinions about them over the weekend. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. When I look at the other, maybe C9 too, depending on how much you want to put on that loss. But I definitely transition to Golden Guardians didn't have my opinion change too much. I think they're still a decent team, who have some real strengths and some real weaknesses. FBI and Huhi are great in lane. They continue to be great in lane, and occasionally in team fights, that's where they start having more problems. And then same with like Damonte's a little hit or miss on his laning with Lysandra and stuff. And even just like coordination on the team starts to fall apart later in the game.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that my opinion really changed much about them. I would also say my opinion didn't really change on Cloud9. I'm not really fazed by like one loss there. I don't think it really matters. But as far as the Golden Guardians point, the one really big standout moment for me was the Lee Sin game from Closer. I think that was just like absolutely an incredible game. He found non-stop engages. Like he was like the main engage as the Lee Sin, just because he was kicking people in every 10 seconds. It was really, really insane. He had, I don't know, like what, 10 kills, 12 kills?
12 kills, 11 assists.
Yeah, and maybe 1 or 2 deaths. Like not a lot of deaths at all. Yeah. So it was a really, really impressive game. I know Closer has had some good ones, and people have some pretty, high opinions of him at times, but it was a bit of a down game. The next game, the TL game, I know he was getting criticized a lot for the dragons getting stolen away and everything, but overall, I feel like they kind of stayed pretty even in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's some small tweaks to Golden Guardians, and if we use today as the sample, where one of the dragon fights that a lot of people are referencing, setting up for it, Damonte's teleport towards mid lane, not having the Lysandra, which is your counter pick for dealing with the LeBlanc at that stage of the game, where you get your point and click, lock her down with the ultimate, you have your WCC, you can just chain on her. Jensen flanks around behind them with the LeBlanc, and they don't have the Lysandra core piece to actually defend for the team. And the entire team then has to have this hesitation move where they get off the objective, get back on it. That leads to one of the smites. Like that is, I have been in that situation before, and damn, that is stressful. Your whole team is panicking. Too. They're like, oh, the LeBlanc over here, guys. Oh, we're getting attacked on this side, guys. Oh, the objective's going down. And you're like, oh, I better like ult on Olaf so they can't stop me, and then use everything, try and combo this dragon. Like, sometimes you lose those, okay? I'm just like freaking out. And then afterwards, they scatter from the team fight. They're like, oh no, what's the game plan now? Half the team's here, half the team's there. So those small tweaks are actually hard to do, but that is clear from this day, at least for me. Mm-hmm. I got a little. My heart was pumping. Even just reliving that. I got.
It's the only hard CC on your team out over here, and you're like, dude, someone stop the Lee, and no one has any way to stop him from getting into that. So I feel you.
All right, let's get into the Honda MVP section then. Thank you very much, Honda, once again for the sponsorship. For this one, we will quickly touch on any adjustments for your Honda Cloud9 MVP, if we can expand it to that being the section. And then with a little bit more of an interesting twist, go into what would your MVP be among players that did not actually start the split.
Okay. I mean, are we all still full send on Blabber for C9 for mid-split MVP?
I would say the only argument emerging for it would be the early deaths, that now seeing it repeatedly punished by contracts, and the 100 Thieves Cloud9 game would be your main piece to be like, okay, now you can draw a little bit back on Blabber and try and put one of the teammates forward. That being said, Niski also got solo killed by Bjergsen, which, Bjergsen has been doing really well, but those would be the small tweaks that I would see from the past week.
Yeah. I'm still on Blabber, to be honest, because I'm trying to think about it. I just think that the way that the team plays bot lane is not as emphasized. It's not as core to the identity of the team and their success. So I think you're almost just as a result of that, kind of looking at that top triangle. I do think that, Licorice and Niski have made, equal amount of mistakes kind of thing. I think Licorice maybe even a little bit more. He's been really dominant, but he has also kind of had his errors. Blabber has had some too, but he's also been, the source of just like so many of their wins and so many, crushing defeats for other teams. So he's definitely still my front runner, but I would say right now, if I have to do a top 3, it's literally just like Licorice, Blabber, and Niski.
All right, then moving right along. Lorlo, Dardoch, Phoenix, Contracts, Poom, Alorum, Insanity, Xmithie, Apollo, Hakuo, Mash, Deus. I would say contracts just right off the bat because we're coming so quickly off of that weekly. Excuse me, off of that win. What did I say? Off that wiggly?
Ooh,
Okay.
Wiggly?
Off that weekly.
Hmm.
Off the wiggly.
Off the wiggly.
You're coming off the wiggly.
It's hard not to say contracts after that, and they are 3-1 with this roster, so it does feel a lot better in terms of like sheer dominance. Outside that win, though, I think Dardoch has looked really good. Even in the loss that they had, I think it was against TSM, where he played Wukong jungle, he was making a lot of good plays.
Had that counter gank.
Yeah, so like I don't remember if it was TSM or not, but either way,
It was
like
against C9. The Wukong jungle game was against C9.
Right. So like I think Dardoch has been individually a little bit more impressive for me over their stint. Contracts, his week 1 was worse, but his week 2 was better. So I would maybe say Dardoch, but it's kind of hard not to go contracts after this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's between them. I also think maybe I'd give a nod towards Xmithy. Just like I do think he does a lot for the team. I do think that both Immortals and Dignitas.
Is that your intangibles award?
A little bit, and also from talking to some people and like hearing about from like the horse's mouth, so to speak, like all the stuff that he does for the teams. But I would say that like so contracts I think has performed really, really well, and 100 Thieves obviously is looking the best of those 3 teams. But Dignitas looked so worthless, like coming into this week, and Immortals too. Like these teams looked horrible. Right? Like they didn't look like they had anything going. So I do think that despite the fact that they don't look as good as 100 Thieves, maybe, I do think it's nice to see that there's like a pretty major resurgence to go from like so clearly just like an instant loss every time it felt like to actually taking some wins against good teams is pretty impressive. So I think they deserve some credit. And I'm actually just even just like as an overall kind of more meta point, I'm happy that more teams did this. And I do think that this is one of those situations where, as much as sometimes people rag on franchising, I actually think this is a product of franchising, that we could actually have these roster swaps and more kind of risky changes and stuff. Immortals swapping out their entire LCS roster, people being able to make big moves like 100 Thieves, swapping out Meteos, who's a really big name, putting in Poom, who's relatively unknown. These are things I'm not convinced necessarily would have happened in that relegation era. And I do think that, it's good to actually point out some of the benefits when we see them, because it's like, hey, teams know that they're still going to be in the league next year, so they can take a shot at real improvement, at real change. And I'm just happy that those 3 teams are leaps and bounds beyond what they were, it felt like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. As long as we just need to start improving the academy system, so it's not swapping an Apollo, Hawko, and Smithy from your academy team.
I'm with you.
Your sage advice was great this weekend, by the way.
Oh, thank you. The Smithy one.
Yeah. I would also say, just in terms of like the swap-ins, MVP is not necessarily who I'm most excited for either. Like I think I'm Insanity
MVP of swap-ins.
Yeah, they're the best of the swap-ins, but I think like Insanity to me is the one I'm like sick. I'm glad this guy got a shot and stuff to go off like that kind of. Glad that with the franchise people could take risks.
He's been exciting. He's been fun to watch. Like he's had some really good games with some just like memorable bad moments, which I think I think it's true, right? It's like one of those things where I think that can sometimes negatively affect people's overall image because they forget all these other things around it because it's just like this funny clippable moment or whatever. Which always just makes me think of the Cody Sun thing at Worlds, where like everyone just repeats that 1,000 times and forgets that their team had super minions pushing in mid, and they just had to sit there AFK and flame turret dove instead of just AFKing. And not only did he turret dive, he turret dove the tank on the other team in a 5v5 at the tier 2. So like that's just one of those things where it's like sometimes it gets overlooked, and I'm not gonna rant on that too much because I think Cody Sun it should actually be Flame who's
stop down for a full VOD review.
Yeah. I'm down for that. I want to revisit this and write history straight.
I have so much respect from the players that are able to take big flame like that and move on and move through it, because it is hard for me. If I get flamed online for even any one little like most downvoted negative comment or something that's like hid, I'm always like, but I gotta change that one person's mind.
I'm deep in the Reddit threads. Sunday today there's been some. I'm reading them. I'm feisty. I want to fire back, but I don't have the energy right now.
Well, let's get into the Twitter sphere then. How about that? I'll do first question. What do we got here? Oh, that's a difficult one. All right. Vexeratus at Vexeratus has the question. Do you think this year has been the best for North American talent / rookies? You have people like Poom, Deus, and the entire Immortals Academy roster joining the LCS. Well, we just had part of our Honda MVP section kind of dedicated to allow those players that didn't start the split and got subbed in. I would say that this is the biggest that we have ever had the reach for this conversation to go. So I think that, yes, this is the best year, but this is not it, like we're at the very beginning of the mountain. So I think we are running into a bunch of very good years for rookies, and especially NA rookies, because it just finally feels like there's a huge groundswell of support just growing, that people are going to be pushing on academy stars, pushing even on the level below that as well to look for more NA talent and more of these rookie players.
Yeah, I agree. I agree so much. I think you absolutely nailed it. You know, I do think that a lot of the attention that's actually being given now to academy players, and there's a lot more discussion even in the LCS and on podcasts of like, hey, the level isn't that different. We were just talking about that with Sion and Jack, you know, and the ability for some of these teams to actually compete. I am excited about that prospect, and shout out to G-Bay. He made a really good video that I'm sure you guys can find pretty easily, but where he has actually done like a lot of kind of watching of some of the amateur scenes, and he gives his scouting reports, so to speak, on some of these players. And
I love how it's like, this guy's got to be in Worlds too. I'm like getting amped.
Yeah, I was getting pumped up. I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, okay. Tell me all about it. Let's go.
All right, I'll be the I'll be the downer, if you will. I think 2018 had a arguably better rookie class. This is Licorice coming in. This is Zazel eventually when he subbed in. Definitely started as well. Like that was a great core from E United. There was also, I forget which team they played on, but like the University of Toronto guys that all came in around the same time, which was JJ. I think Eric got a couple games in. Some of them. I think DeMonte technically started for a little bit for the first time as well.
Yeah, I think you are pooling a lot of the rookies into like the same year, but I do agree
Is that not what we're doing?
There's been no, I mean, I think you're squishing a lot of them together that weren't the same class.
He's saying they
you're making them
they were all 2018.
Every single okay.
Yeah. Hey, one of us covered academy back then.
Okay.
Right. It depends if you count spring or not, because then it's 2 splits. But I assume.
I'll let it go. I'll let it go. You got me.
All right, we got another question here. This one's from David. I think I actually answered this one on Twitter, but we'll give it again. It says, how do you think the OG Cloud9 squad would do if they were an 11th team coming into LCS right now? I said it on Twitter. I'll say it here. If they started in 11th, they would stay in 11th. You know, like, you know, if you're giving this imaginary world where they like practiced up for a year and all this stuff, and maybe, but putting them in as is, Lemon Nation doesn't even play ranked anymore, right? Like the difference in levels, I think, between a lot of the players would be pretty stark.
I mean, you don't even have to take our word for it. I think High was asked this on the
High
desk.
said they would get slammed.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, we get crapped on. So like, I agree. Like if they went full try hard, that they could reach a level that, you know, was actually probably decent. But that's assuming that they're, you know, willing to do that right now. And if you're just taking them as is, there's no way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought the people postulating for Cloud9 Academy and how well they would do, moving right along. So we get into some of the anchor questions.
Let's go.
All right. Anchor question number 1.
Hey guys, huge fan of the show. My question is, why do we not see more AD champs in the mid lane?
I mean,
right.
Who's going to go first? Because my first answer is usually with balancing the rest of the team. There's not a lot of people trying to play like Nidalee or Fiddlesticks in the jungle. Not a lot of AP threat for jungle. So it puts a lot of pressure on either your bottom laner to play a mage, which not all of the bottom laners are super comfortable or well equipped to do, or your top laner to have to be something that's also not quite in meta, like Rumble or something like that. So there are more difficult places to find AP than there are really good sources of I must have this AD champion or this AD matchup in mid lane. And so sometimes you get the odd Jace or something like that in mid lane, which I think is a good flex and can be played around. But you really have to be cognizant about balancing.
Yeah, I think the caller listed a bunch of champions of the NA ones that are being played, or excuse me, AD ones that are being played. It's not just about displacing your team comp's damage profile, but also there's nothing in the AD champ pool that can do what most control mages can do. The AD champs do not provide much utility for their team for the most part. What's the AD equivalent of Orianna? What's the AD equivalent even of Lissandra with the amount of guaranteed lockdown CC
Wukong,
that she
AoE,
provides?
knock up ×2.
Yeah, melee range, and then you don't take. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons of these different things.
Yeah.
As Azirs and like some of like. There's not many AD champs that can actually take that role of ranged DPS while also having team fight utility and CC. Like that's pretty limited in the AD champ selection.
I will say though, I don't actually think you need to have utility always coming from mid lane. I think which is why I do think that a lot of it really is just largely there's not good AP top lane champions for pro either. There's like Mordekaiser, that's like the only one people play. Akali falling out of pro play, I think was a massive issue with that. When Akali could be flexed between two lanes, you could just pick Akali and Jace or Akali and Aurelia or Akali and whatever, and you could actually like have that type of setup. Rumble has fallen out a lot too. I mean, you can play Mordekaiser, but a lot of the AP champions that you see in solo queue, like Vladimir or Cassio and stuff, are considered very risky to play top lane because people are better at coordinating and actually ganking and punishing you. Kale as well is very situational. So I tend to think that there's a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, I would still say though, like what's your global comp if you're playing an AD mid? Because for AP you have Galio, you have
AD Twisted Fate, baby.
Yeah, AD Twisted Fate. I was gonna say you have AP Twisted Fate. I mean, you could do it that way, but it doesn't quite have the same usage.
It doesn't have to be a global comp though, right? Like
no, but I'm saying like those comps that you run don't have a substitute for AD. So if I'm running a supportive buff up my jungler, there's zero options. If I'm running global, there's zero options. And
totally.
There's just fewer team comps you can craft, even if you could find like I can get a cannon top, I can get a Mord top in some of these situations, but what I can't do is hyper scale around my bot lane with an AD mid because all of them are either melee or just damage.
Yeah. Also, I would say there has to be a reason that you want something besides Azir, Orianna, Galio. Like these champions provide such big things. What is the reason I would want something else? I just changing damage types, for a very specific reason. Those champions right now are super prevalent for a big reason because they're very powerful just in their own right.
Yep.
Good
definitely
question.
Agree. All right. Good question. We got another one here. This one's from Sterling G.
Hey Kobe, Mark Z and Azael. This is Sterling. I'm an NYU student based from New York, and so I love the dive. I wait for the podcast year round. It's like my favorite. And my question for you guys is, what do you guys think about more lane dominant AD carries like Kog'Maw, Lulu, or maybe Caitlyn and Enchanter supports? I just feel like the meta right now is very safe with Aphelios, Ezreal, and Misfortune. I would love to see more picks dominate the lane and push advantages through bot. Thank you, and love you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for
love
the
you
kind
too.
Words.
Can't say I love you too. I don't know you well enough.
Yeah. I'm not
I can.
I don't
you
use
guys
that
have
word.
girlfriends.
I don't use that word lightly. Let's say that.
There you go. All right. So I do think there's a couple parts. I don't see stuff like Kog'Maw Lulu, for example, as lane dominant. There are maybe some matchups you can win, but you're so power gated around your W. That doesn't feel like a lane dominant one to me. I will say we are seeing many more Enchanter supports. We're seeing more Karma than we have in like forever. We're seeing Ashe come back in pretty heavily, which is lane dominant. Varus is a lane focused one as well. So I do think we're seeing more. Kalista is more of a kill lane, early game focus. So we're seeing more of it. I agree that there is still more room for it. Like I am always wanting Zyra and Brand and Vel'Koz and like these types of supports because those types of supports can absolutely destroy like the Tom Kenches and the Brahms and everything. So I would love to see more of that, but it is all more risky, so I understand why people aren't doing it, but I do think there's more room to branch out still.
And we've seen, sorry, Mark, a little bit of it kind of on display where you'll have like the Ezreal and they pick a Tom Kench and you both, boom, Karma on top of it. And now we have Ezreal, Karma, double poke, trying to get that advantage early. Plus, I really like the Ashe point because Ashe is just like one of the strongest laners in the whole game with volley plus the extra range. Ashe has a little bit less range than Caitlyn, but she still has enough to get your extra auto trade off, especially since you can volley first and then go for the trade. And she has a lot of wave control to boot. So I'd be like, we're seeing a pretty big surge of Ashe play, and that kind of fits the bill.
Yeah, the Enchantress support part is the thing that I definitely think there's a little bit more room for, because we already are seeing, for the most part, lane dominant champions. They're not necessarily as, like, I think with the Caitlyn thing, what you're imagining is like perma pushed up, taking turret plays, trying to jam down that turret. But that's pretty unique to that champion. I think, like we're saying with Ashe, that's the next closest. The other thing I'll say is that I wouldn't mind seeing more kill lanes, like the Wukong Senna post 6 can become a little bit of a kill lane, and it's something that will lose fairly hard early, get perma pushed in for the first 6 levels. You'll be down like 20 CS on your Wukong, maybe if they're playing something like we saw this weekend, which was, I think, Karma Ashe, like that will destroy you. But then
30.
But then you start getting kill threat if the rest of your team can start helping you out. So like, I do think the bot lane meta is actually a little bit more diverse with things than people are necessarily giving it credit for, just because Aphelios is so prevalent.
Aphelios Ezreal, I think people are just sick of.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been around since the last split, and even a little bit, so I definitely understand that there's a bit of staleness in the meta, but I think once you get outside the top 2, it does branch out a little bit more.
Sweet. Well,
just wait for the Anivia Poppy combo coming in.
That sounded
I like
pretty
that
hype.
one.
All right. With that, though, the week of upsets is officially done. And we are done with this episode of The Dive. Thank you, Honda, for making this possible. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in for our little experiment this week, the Sunday episode. If you liked it, let us know in the comments or on Twitter or on Anchor. You can keep sending us your questions on all those different mediums. And be sure to tune into the LCS this weekend, as well as we enter the second half round robin. We're going to be recording another episode this coming Sunday that will release the following Monday, July 20th. Kobe will be gone. We're looking for a guest. I'm not sure if it's solidified yet, but we're going to have a third with Mark and I, and we'll see you then.